Hello everybody, it's Miss Hague. I hope you're keeping well. I've come back this week to do another piece of artwork with you to give you a little bit of inspiration. This is come from my niece Evie, who suggested that we should draw an animal this week. So I found us some information and some images, and that's what we're going to use for our inspiration. Today you are going to need a drawing of an animal, be it an animal that you know, a pet, or it may be an image that you find on the internet. You can find, if you put animal outline or wolf outline or dog outline, cat, lion, tiger, stag outline, you can use that to start with and it'll give you an easier way to work. You're going to need a piece of cartridge paper or some kind of slightly thicker paper, depending on what you want to use media wise to colour it in. You may want to find some images. I've looked at the artist Luke Dixon, who uses animals as his inspiration, so you may want to look at Luke Dixon. You'll need some felt tips or coloured pencils, depending on what you want to use, a black pen, either a writing pen or a felt tip, a pencil, and because I'm going to use watercolours, I'm going to use them as watercolours. I've got a piece of tile, but you could use a piece of plastic or a plate, as long as it's not one that anybody's going to miss and you don't get shouted at for using. And I'm going to use some water so that I can thin out my pens while I'm working. So once you've got your outline, you might just want to have it on your phone or on your laptop so you can draw it. You're going to start by drawing your animal. So however you want to choose to do that, whether it's through a grid drawing where you could draw a grid, and as long as the same grid is on your A4 paper, you might want to do that. You might want to split your paper into quarters using a ruler, then split your image into quarters and then draw each section as you see fit. You would draw it, you would split it into 4, fold it back on itself and start with one section at a time. You'll remember, like we did when you were in year 8, when you did the rhino. I apologise, I'm not using a ruler. You can measure it so that it's accurate, don't do it like this. And then you would, in each section, you would draw exactly what's there, so you can put marks, give yourself a base outline, and then you can join up the drawing, or you can draw it freehand. If you're feeling confident, I would use some form of grid, even if it's just to give you a base of where your image starts and where it ends, to make sure you've got the scale right, because you don't want it too small or too big. You want it to fit your paper as best you can, and then you would draw the image however you want to. So I'm not going to draw the image with you today because I think you already know how to do your basic drawing. What I've already done is I've already drawn my image. So I've drawn a very, very loose outline of this wolf, if you can see it, yeah. And I've just put the basic lines on. I've not put the dark shading on. I've just put the outlines because I'm going to do all that later with a pen. Once you've done the outline, you can then look at some images for inspiration. So you could type in coloured Zentangle, you can type in Luke Dixon, you could type in pattern drawing animal. There's lots of different things you can type in to get these images, and you can have a look at those to give you a little bit of inspiration so you can work out what it is that you're going to do. First of all, you need to section your animal off. Now, it doesn't have to be symmetrical. It can, but it doesn't have to be. Each side can have its own patterns and its own shapes. It's completely up to you how you want to do it, but all you're doing is breaking the space up so it's not all going to be the same colour. So once you've broken the shapes up, I'm going to press on a little bit harder here because I think you'll be able to see it better, but I probably wouldn't press on very hard. I'd keep it very light until I'd got all my lines drawn in, just in case I've made mistakes. And then once you've done that, then you can apply colour. So the colours you could use paint if you've got paints, you could use colour pencils, you could use felt tips if you wanted to, although you might struggle a little bit to work on top of those, but you could give it a try. I'm going to use watercolour felt tips. You could use normal felt tips if you've got them, but these are some that I bought from Lidl a few weeks ago. And they're really, really nice. They were very cheap, but they're really nice. They're double-ended, and I'm going to use the brush end. And on my tile that I've procured, that were left over from my bathroom when it was done, I'm going to add a little bit of the watercolour to the tile, and then I'm going to add a little bit of water, and then I am literally going to paint the surfaces. So I'm going to do the outside edges first, because that's the best way of doing it. And then I'm going to fill the centres in. You can try adding more water if you're going to do something with felt tips. You can use normal felt tips for this. If you've got like kind of Crayola ones or any kind of felt tips will work. It depends more about what paper you're working on. So if you've got a sketchbook with nice paper in it, it will work better. If you try it and it tends to not bleed and not kind of not run, then it might not be very good paper for doing it, so you might be better trying coloured pencils or a different technique. You can try different techniques that we've been taught at school. So you could try blending from one colour one way, take two colours that work well together. Remember how we talked about complementary colours? They don't blend very well. If they're opposite each other on the colour wheel, they don't tend to work as well together. But if you have colours that are next to each other on the colour wheel or nearly next to each other on the colour wheel, they'll blend really well. So yellow and orange are really good friends. They work really well together, so I could blend from one colour like that, and then while my work's still wet, clean my brush, get some yellow on there, and then I can blend into a yellow. So you could try blending colours, you can try solid block colours, you can try a little bit more water so that it gives it a little bit, just a little bit more variety, so you're not just using all the same colours. You could use kind of all the same colorscapes, so you could kind of look at colours that work together well, and you could use those, so the entire thing was made up of, say, kind of pastel colours, or ice cream colours as I like to call them, or it could all be kind of, you know, monochromatic, meaning it could be just kind of like red and orange, and you could just use, or just one colour, just use red. You can do it the way that we do in lessons sometimes, where you go around the outside and then use water to pull it in. But I quite like using, seeing as I've decided I'm going to buy tiles for us at school when we get back. We're all going to have tiles to be able to work on, if I can find some in a shop that don't exist, then we'll be able to do that. But that's my plan of action. So once you've drawn the wolf, sorry, I'm just checking to make sure you can see. Once you've coloured it all in completely, and then once it's dry, you'll be able to work on it with a black felt tip or a black writing pen. I'm going to use this Japanese pen that my friend sent me because it's very posh, and I just wanted to use it. This has got a brush end, so I can do very tight line work, or I can do fatter lines and thinner lines with it. They're absolutely amazing, these pens, but they are a little bit expensive, so probably not something that you're going to have on hand. But a normal black felt tip or a black biro would work absolutely fine. So if I'm looking at my images that are my reference point, just make sure you can see them on camera, yep. I'm going to then start putting some patterns in. So this one's dry because I already did it. So I'm going to start with an outline. I'm going to box this section off. You don't have to, but I've chosen to. And then I'm going to add pattern. So looking at these images, looking at all the different ones, I could work using line, thick lines and thin lines. I could create some kind of checkerboard effect where you colour alternate squares in. These pens aren't brilliant for colouring alternate squares in, but I'm going to try it anyway. You can do double lines, so where something's got one line, you can add another one, or a partial one like that. I think that's dry. I could, well, looking at inspiration from this, looking around this little stitch, obviously you don't have to just use an animal that's a real animal. You could find some kind of mythical animal. You could do a dragon, or you could do something that doesn't exist. You could do a Disney character if you were feeling that way inclined. I'm going to take a little line, a little section, and create a box. I'm going to create a fatter line there, because it's nice to do fat and thin lines, because then you create more depth in your work. It's not just flat. So if you have some areas that have got thin, close together lines, some areas that have got larger, thicker lines, and some that have got different shaped lines, you don't have to just use line. You could absolutely use, let me just check to see if you can see that bit, yep. You could create something. If you look at Zentangling on the internet and look at Google Images, you can obviously create different shapes and patterns. So this one's a little bit more of a kind of tiger stripe maybe, Would love to see a version of a tiger done like this, or a lion. I think that would look really nice. His mane all decorated in different patterns would look beautiful. But it's something, it's a really good way of practicing your line skills and your mark making skills. It's a really good way of trying media application. So if you're a little bit rusty and out of practice and you've not done a lot of line work and a lot of colouring since we've broken up or since we've finished school, then it might be a good way for you to practice that. It's a good way of getting your drawing in. So doing your animal drawings are not easy. Drawing animals isn't an easy thing at all. So it might be something that you want to practice. Obviously, if you didn't want to do an animal, you wanted to do a person, or you wanted to draw something else, you're more than welcome to do that. But I just really fancied, and as I say, my niece suggested that we should maybe draw an animal, and I thought that was a very good idea. So I found some for us to have a look at. Obviously, you would fill every section, so I wouldn't just do 3 or 4 sections. The entire thing would be coloured in by the time I've done. And then, obviously, you can add as much fine detail back in. So the eyes, I could colour those in if I wanted to, or I could leave them because they might stand out a little bit more. If I keep looking back at my original image so that I make sure that the eyes look really realistic, because I think it could spoil your image if you did the eyes wrong and you coloured the coloured part in the iris in possibly in black or something accidentally. It would make the image look a little bit strange. So it's always good to try and keep some bits quite realistic, and then it makes the patterns really pop on your page and really stand out. You can try, as I say, symmetrical patterns, you can try geometric patterns. Those are the kind of like maths patterns, triangles, circles, squares, oblongs, and all those kind of shapes. Or you could go more organic. You could kind of go for like leaf shapes and feather shapes. This hasn't got any colour behind this area, but I'll just demonstrate. I know my pen's running out. A beautiful pen. So I could kind of create leaf shapes, or I could look at the more geometric things, and I could I'll do some down here if you can see. Let me just check. Yep. I could do some kind of circles. Not very nice circles. This pen doesn't lend itself to circles because it's a brush end, but you can more than welcome to try things. So ladies and gentlemen, that's what I would like you to have a go at this week. I'd love you to tweet us or email us some of your examples and see what you've done. And then on Proud Thursday, we'll be able to show some of your work off to everybody else and see what wonderful things you've been doing, and be able to tweet some of the best outcomes that we get. So I hope you enjoy it. Stay safe, look after yourselves, and have a lovely week. Bye.